This is I Am Change podcast. Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. There is zero success without change. Be the change you want to see. Believe, focus, achieve. Discrimination against people with learning disabilities and misconceptions about their lives is still widespread in Nigeria, despite the awareness that is being created. It is estimated that 2 out of 100 people has a learning disorder ranging from autism, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, and lots more. However, there are growing concerns that majority of these persons suffer stigma and are relegated to the background. This podcast edition focuses on these special individuals, their challenges, acceptance, and inclusion in mainstream society. My guest today is Dr. Badewa Adejugbe Williams, founder of the Royal School of Educational Therapy. She is also an educational specialist and therapist with core specialization in pupils with disabilities. And I am your host, Joyce Ometu. It's good to have you on I Am Change podcast.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
So we're quite familiar with a number of disabilities, visual impairment, hard of hearing, physical disability. And now a lot of attention is being drawn to the concept of learning disability lately. What really is learning disability?
Okay, we have what we call specific learning disability, which is the umbrella that covers various disorders that affects a child's learning.
Okay.
Now, a learning disability specifically is the form of disability that affects cognitive, which is your intellect, and also it affects the adaptive skills, which is your life skills, your communication skills, your social skills. So if there's a discrepancy in these areas, then you have a learning disability, or a child has a learning disability. Now, there's so many other disabilities that do not necessarily mean that a child has learning disability, and I'll explain that. We have some children who have such disorders as autism spectrum disorder who are quite gifted. So if that child is gifted, though the child has a disability, the child does not have a learning disability. There's some children who are diagnosed with maybe cognitive disability, but they have different levels. Some could be mild, that is, you can educate them in an inclusive classroom. Some could be moderate, which means they need a lot of support. And then some could be severe, which means that really they will not be comfortable in a general education placement. They have to be placed in a special education classroom. So it really depends. But, assessment usually diagnoses that.
Okay, so what are the causes?
To give you specific causes will be like pulling straws, and a lot of research has been done. It's inconclusive. However, there's some factors that may cause some disabilities. Genetics has been blamed for some. And when we talk about genetics, my question to scientists is, okay, so somebody in the past must have had it. What caused it with that person in the past? They're not able to respond to that yet because no one knows. Then environmental factors. When you think about what's in the air, things we breathe in, things we use on our bodies, kind of all the chemicals we spray in the house, food, we grow some of our food with fertilizers and with chemical repellents for the insects. All kinds of impurities, toxins in the environment that are affecting. It affects the brain development as well. Then how a mother takes care of her prenatal, we call it antenatal. Do you go for a checkup? Do you take your vitamins? Do you have, your all essential vitamins the child is supposed to have? Are you eating the right food? Are you within the right environment during your pregnancy? Are you stressless or you stress a lot? Also look about when they were born. Sometimes when a child doesn't come out normally, there's tendency for doctors to force the child out. Maybe the brain was squeezed. Maybe jaundice. Maybe something could have happened during delivery or even after birth. Fever, some infections. And you have some that are chromosomal imbalance, Down syndrome is an extra chromosome 21. So different things really cause this, but to specifically say it's when you eat this or when you eat that. No one can really conclusively give us that yet.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So, how can one know, or rather, what are the tell signs of knowing a person with a learning disability?
Okay, some could be immediate. You might be able to see from birth.
Okay.
Down syndrome, you'll know. Cerebral palsy, you'll know.
Right.
But there's some like autism spectrum disorder, even though it cannot be diagnosed earlier, but sometimes the signs do not come till the child is 2 or 3.
Oh.
Learning disabilities, like cognitive disability, when you look at milestones of what children are supposed to achieve by certain ages, if the child is not showing that, then there's cause for concern. It could just be a developmental delay, and the child may catch up eventually.
Okay.
But normally, parents, families, especially mothers, can tell if your child is not speaking by a certain age. Some children, it takes them longer to speak, and they do eventually speak.
Yeah.
If the child is not coherent, if the child does not understand directions, if the child is forgetful, if the child is not social as the child is supposed to be,
right.
If the child can keep eye contact, to a level, or does not show you affection, then you start knowing that something may be wrong. You may not know specifically what it is, but you have that instinct.
Okay. All right. So is there a cure?
If there's a cure, I'll go get it right now. There's no specific cure to get rid of any of these disorders, but there's some interventions that have been quite helpful. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Namely, definitely academics is important.
Okay.
Therapeutic activities, therapy, depending on what the child needs, is important. Diet is very important.
Diet?
Yes, diet is important. It's extremely important because what goes into your body impacts how your brain develops.
Right.
There's some other interventions like some people do stem cell. Some people do fecal therapy. So many things have been developed. But, essentially, we need to know what the child needs. So this as well is done by assessing. You assess the child's strength and the child's area of weakness, and then you develop intervention plans to help mitigate some of this. You have to clean your diet because there's some things we put into our systems that cause some sensory, disorder,
right.
or maybe allergic reaction that the child is allergic to. And when a child is having this allergic reaction, cannot explain it specifically to you, it's manifested in behavior. So you may feel like the child has a behavior problem, whereas the child is reacting to something the child ate, or the soap, or even the texture of the clothing the child is wearing.
Okay. So there are parents and family members who seek all sorts of alternative treatments, such as traditional means. You see some going to prayer houses, and then the use of harsh discipline. I've seen, I think, an autistic child who urinated on herself, and her mom had a cane in her bag, and she whipped her in public. So what advice do you have for such parents?
Okay, traditional medicine. I don't know what the traditional medicine specifically is.
Okay.
I'll be careful. What are the components of it? As I said, there's some things you put into your body that will affect your brain on the long run. So these traditional medicines are the natural remedies, like from herbs and roots. And is there scientific evidence to show what they actually cure or treat?
Okay.
So I'll be really careful with that.
Right.
Another, I've seen people who drink all kinds of things, and they say, somebody gave it to them, and the child is still exhibiting these characteristics. That's an indication that it doesn't work. And you should stop it. It might be poisoning the child, actually. Prayer houses, there's nothing wrong with spirituality. You should always pray.
Right.
But, some people believe that if you just pray, it will go away. No, you pray for wisdom. You pray for the ability to intervene, to know what's the right thing to do.
Right.
These things they're just the way the brain is developed. God did not make an imperfect child. We know that for a fact.
Yeah.
But as I said, there's some things in the environment that may cause these disabilities, but we have wisdom as to who should we talk to, what should we see, how should we treat this child.
Right.
So there's nothing wrong with spirituality, but don't say it's going to cure it. Just ask for the strength and the wisdom, when you pray. Because if you do follow that religiously and you have that faith, and you do the right thing, the child will get better, definitely. So it helps to be prayerful. Now,
harsh discipline.
I have to tell you, I'm guilty. Okay, in the beginning.
Right.
because I did not understand it. I was like, you must know how to do this, you must know how to do that. If you're not, it's because you're being stubborn or you just don't want to obey me. But what that really showed me was the child was getting much more fearful,
Okay.
Anxiety, and anxiety impacts learning. If
Right.
you're too anxious because somebody is going to beat you, then you get tense and you are not as receptive to
Okay.
learning, as opposed to when there's no anxiety.
True.
When you know that you are loved and your parents do understand this. If you have an understanding that it's not their fault,
Right.
it's the way they are born, it's the way the brain is made up. No matter how you beat that child, it will not cure that child.
True.
What you want is cure. And the best way to have this, or at least treatment to help, maybe
Yeah.
not cure, I said that loosely.
Yeah.
The best thing to do is to be understanding, to be patient, but still have consequences.
Okay.
There has to be consequences in place for the child to know that the child is doing something correctly or incorrectly.
Right.
And the type of consequences really depends on what the child will gravitate more towards and on your discipline style. Some people do ABA, applied behavior analysis therapy, and it
Okay.
helps in shaping a behavior. I like to take this from the psychological angle.
Okay.
B.F. Skinner, the psychologist, had this thing called operant conditioning.
Okay.
Not to compare children to dogs, or animals. Some animals are trained.
Yeah.
Dogs, elephants, they're trained through this methodology.
Yeah.
So if you use this incentive methodology of, incentivizing a child by letting the child know what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, and if you break it, what are the consequences?
Okay.
The consequences doesn't have to be beating. It can be taking a privilege away.
All right.
It can be depriving the child from watching TV. It can be telling the child you must make choices. It's either you're going to obey or you're going to clean your room or you're
Okay.
going to wash dishes.
Okay.
When you give them choices and they know what they like,
Right.
they start shaping their behavior
Okay.
to do that automatically.
Okay.
But we have to be consistent. No today is no tomorrow. Yesterday is yes tomorrow. You
Yeah.
cannot be wishy-washy, because they do have some form of intellect to know when you will not follow through on your consequence.
So eventually, when those children grow up, can they contribute positively to the society?
Absolutely. Everybody's got a strength in one thing or the other. I have two of mine with disabilities.
Okay.
And I tell you, driving, we lived in Los Angeles and I used to drive to San Francisco, and I like driving at night.
Okay.
My daughter was always my navigator. She would tell me when it was time to make the turn, and I wouldn't probably not remember.
Wow.
She would say, Mom, you missed it, or Mom, you have to turn here. She has that skill. That's a strength in her.
Okay.
She's very good with children. She's very good with animals. So, some things I have no tolerance for, she's able to do.
Okay.
They program my phone for me. They teach me how to work it sometimes.
Okay.
And these are two of them have children with disabilities, so they all have strengths. Some are gifted, musically. Arts, things that are visual, they have the tendency to learn better that way. We have some people with disabilities who are actually fantastic readers, fantastic coders.
Right.
They may even have their analytical skills to do math computation. They've been used for intelligence gathering. So different people have different strengths. We just need to find out what those strengths are.
Okay.
Some learn vocations. You teach it to them. It may take them a while to learn it. But if they can learn a vocational skill, then they can generate income. They can create something and sell it, and that's contributing significantly to society. Contribution is social, it's also economical. So they have they have the ability. We just have to guide them well.
All right. So how can we get the society, now talking about awareness, to be more understanding and accepting of these persons or these children with special needs?
The most important way right now is what you are doing, giving them an avenue to listen.
Okay.
If we're able to raise awareness,
Right.
to let parents understand that this is not a choice. It's like you have a hand. You have supposed to have 5 fingers. If one is cut off, let's say if the thumb is cut off, how can you ever make the thumb do the work that the thumb doesn't exist?
Right.
So we need to know that the brain doesn't work the same for everybody. So for people to just understand that that, when a child is exhibiting certain characteristics, it's not because it's their fault.
Right.
We need to understand the root cause of it, and we need to know that we have to be empathetic, because it can happen to anybody. Some disabilities can be caused with trauma to the brain. Maybe somebody was in an accident.
Oh.
You hit your head against something that,
Right.
caused some kind of concussion. You may lose part of your brain functions. Some people who play sports, they may get hurt. Anything can happen to cause a disability in others.
Okay.
So we need to really be very empathetical. So society needs to understand that.
Okay. Is there any act that seeks to protect the children with intellectual disability?
Yes, because the Child Rights Act even made stipulation for people with disabilities. It identified blind, deaf, and dumb, even though dumb is not politically correct these days. That's referring to people who have some kind of cognitive disability.
Right.
They're supposed to be protected. Their rights are protected. They're supposed to have access to free education. They're supposed to have access to free health care. They're supposed to have access to whatever materials or supplementals they need in whatever environment they are in, to make their learning and their self-aware skills and their vocational skills, to make it amenable and accessible to them. They have the rights to have all the technology that's available to everybody else to be made available to them. They have the right to be protected, protected against sexual predators. They have the right to be protected of their own rights. They should not be discriminated against by anybody. They should be included in all aspects of society.
All right. So what are the challenges faced by caregivers like you and teachers of these children?
Okay. Number one, resource. Okay. If you don't, it's very expensive to take care of a child with special needs. As I said, they may need special diets. They may need supplements, that are quite expensive. They may need assistive technology. It may be Braille. It may be a hearing aid. It may be just to give them access to computers. Keyboards, enlarged keyboards. Different things that will make life much more bearable for them. These things are very costly. Then patience. You need to be patient. I always feel like it takes someone who has a family member with a disorder, who has that understanding of what it is to actually care for other people's children.
True.
So you need to really be caring. You need to be extremely patient. It may take a person maybe 5 minutes to do a chore. Someone with disability may take an hour. You cannot rush them. Just be patient and let them do it. We need to have some kind of education, access to education, to training, capacity building. Science always discovers new methodologies, new strategies, new things that are impacting. We need to be willing, and we need to be able to afford to take these classes and learn these things. So there has to be training and retraining. You have to be a professional student when you are dealing with children with special needs.
Right.
So those are the things that need to be in place, so that we can all function better. You also have to be a team player. It's a collaborative effort.
That's
you
true.
don't just send your child to school and leave your child at school for the teachers to deal with. There has to be some kind of understanding between the school and the home.
Okay.
There has to be consistency in what's done at school and what's done at home. You need to be supportive of each other. Okay, a parent should not blame a teacher for a child's inefficiency in some areas. Also, teachers should not blame parents, for the child's behavior. There are things that mitigate this. We need to have that understanding and that willingness to work together to intervene.
Okay, finally, are there enough specialist educationists to attend to children with special needs in Nigeria?
I do not believe so. As it is, we have so many centers, private schools who are in need of specialists. We don't have enough facilities to train them. How many universities do we have training in special education? I only know of Federal College of Education in Oyo. And I know there's a special education college also in Jos. But, look at the nation. Look at the number of people with disabilities in Nigeria. They're not enough. We need beyond people who go for training, either teacher training or NCE. A lot of them are not in the classrooms anyways. They just get that degree and they go do something else. So we don't have enough facilities for those who really want to learn, and for those who are learning, we don't have incentives or encouragement for them to go into the field and get better. Those are the areas we need to work on.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an informative session. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right. The license to a child's happiness is embedded in his or her rights to life, education, and basic living standards. Legally, every Nigerian child has the right to education and good health, right to develop and to participate actively in the promotion of his or her rights. Disability is just a perception. It is not inability. You've been listening to I Am Change podcast. I'm Joyce Ometu. Thank you for listening.